My name is Marcus, and I'm lying here in this hospital bed, watching the machines that keep me alive beep in their monotonous rhythm. The doctors whisper words like complications, infection, and critical. They think I can't hear them, but I catch every syllable. My body has betrayed me once again, just like it did the day I was born 34 years ago. The pneumonia spreading through my lungs feels like drowning from the inside, each breath a battle I'm not sure I'll win. This might be my last chance to tell my story, to share what these eyes have witnessed when everyone thought I wasn't really there. Cerebral palsy claimed my body before I even took my first breath, stealing my voice, my movement, my independence. The doctors told my parents I would never walk, never talk properly, never live a normal life. They were right about some things, wrong about others. My wheelchair became my legs, my computer became my voice, but my mind remained untouched, sharp as a blade. People speak freely around those they consider disabled, as if we're invisible, as if we're not really listening. They have no idea how much we actually see. From my corner of every room, I've witnessed love affairs, business deals, family secrets, and human nature in its rawest form. I've seen marriages crumble over breakfast conversations, watched children lie to their parents with practiced ease. I've observed the quiet desperation in people's eyes when they think no one is looking. My silence became my superpower, my stillness a window into souls that others never get to glimpse. While the world moved around me, I became its most dedicated student, learning lessons about humanity that no textbook could ever teach. The irony isn't lost on me that as my body fails, my memories have never been clearer. Every face, every conversation, every moment of joy and heartbreak I've witnessed plays back in perfect detail. Perhaps this is God's way of preparing me, giving me one final gift before I either recover or cross over. The nurses think I'm sleeping, but I'm wide awake, ready to share the secrets of a life lived in observation. My story isn't just about surviving with disability, it's about the profound privilege of seeing the world through eyes that others forgot were watching. Today marks exactly 34 years since I entered this world, and it might be the day I leave it. The doctors aren't optimistic about my chances, but they don't know about the fire that burns inside this broken body. They see limitations, I see possibilities. They see a patient, I see a storyteller with decades of material. As the morphine dulls the pain but sharpens my memories, I'm going to tell you everything. Every secret, every revelation, every moment of beauty and ugliness I've collected over 3 decades of silent observation. The ventilator hums its mechanical song, and I close my eyes, ready to take you on a journey through a life lived differently. This is my autobiography, told not through achievements or adventures, but through countless moments when I was present but unseen. I was listening but unheard, understanding everything while appearing to comprehend nothing. Welcome to the world through the eyes of someone who was born to watch, destined to remember. Someone determined to share it all before time runs out. My earliest memories stretch back to when I was just 3 years old, already aware that something made me different. Other children ran and played while I sat motionless, trapped in this uncooperative body. But even then, I was learning to read people, to understand their moods and motivations. My aunt would visit and speak in hushed tones about family problems, assuming I couldn't process her words. She was wrong. I absorbed every detail, every emotion, every secret she thought was safe to share. That's when I first realized that being underestimated could be an advantage. The hospital staff moves around me now with practiced efficiency, checking monitors and adjusting medications. They discuss my condition in medical terms, speaking as if I'm not mentally present. Dr. Martinez just told the nurse that my oxygen levels are dropping, that the infection is more aggressive than expected. He doesn't know I understand every word, that I'm mentally cataloging his concerns and fears. Even now, facing my own mortality, I'm still the observer, still collecting data about human behavior under stress. Some habits never die even when the person might. Sarah, my wife, sits beside me holding my hand, her wedding ring catching the fluorescent light. She thinks I'm unconscious, but I feel every tremor in her touch, hear every whispered prayer she makes. She's trying to be strong for our daughter Emma, who's only 7 and doesn't fully understand why Daddy is in the hospital again. Sarah's strength amazes me. She's carried our family through every crisis, every setback, every moment when my body failed us. Now she's preparing to carry on without me, though she doesn't know I'm aware of her quiet preparations. The machines around me tell their own story of a body shutting down, systems failing one by one. My lungs, already compromised by 34 years of respiratory challenges, are losing their battle against this infection. The doctors have tried everything, antibiotics, breathing treatments, steroids, but my immune system was never strong to begin with. Still, my mind remains crystal clear, perhaps clearer than it's ever been. It's as if my consciousness is burning brighter as my body dims, one last gift before the final chapter closes. Outside my window, life continues its relentless pace. People walk by on the sidewalk below, rushing to appointments, meetings, dates. They have no idea that someone is watching them from a hospital room, cataloging their movements and expressions. That woman checking her phone is nervous about something, a job interview, perhaps, or a difficult conversation. The man walking his dog stops to help an elderly lady with her groceries, a small act of kindness that no one else notices. These moments of human connection still fascinate me even now. The infection that brought me here started as a simple cold, something that healthy people shake off in a few days. But for someone like me with compromised lung function and a weakened immune system, even minor illnesses become major threats. I felt it coming on last Tuesday. The familiar tightness in my chest, the slight fever that would escalate quickly. Sarah wanted to bring me to the hospital immediately, but I insisted on staying home for Emma's school play. I couldn't bear to miss watching our daughter shine on stage, even if it meant risking my health. That night, as Emma took her bow in her butterfly costume, I felt proud beyond words. She had inherited none of my physical limitations but all of my determination. Watching her perform with confidence and joy, I realized that my legacy wouldn't be found in what I couldn't do. It would live on in the strength I'd helped instill in her, the love I'd shared with Sarah, the courage I'd shown in the face of countless challenges. If this infection takes me, at least I'll leave knowing that I made a difference in the lives that mattered most. Now, as another wave of fever washes over me, I'm ready to share everything I've witnessed, learned, and understood. My voice may be trapped in this failing body, but my story will live on through the words I'm about to tell you. Every secret observation, every moment of human truth I've collected over 34 years of watching the world unfold. This is the story of a life lived in silence but filled with profound understanding.
We tell emotional and inspiring stories about life's toughest battles, moments of illness, struggle, recovery, love, and loss. Not every story has a happy ending, but each one carries a powerful message of strength, hope, and humanity. Subscribe to discover moving stories that touch the heart and stay with you forever.
A story that proves the quiet ones often see the most, understand the deepest truths, and have the most important things to say. My childhood began in a world of doctors, therapists, and well-meaning relatives who spoke about me as if I couldn't hear them. At 4 years old, I already understood that people revealed their truest selves around those they considered less than. My Aunt Sarah visited every Sunday, playing the perfect family member during dinner. But I heard her phone conversations when she thought I was napping, planning to leave my uncle for her tennis instructor. She spoke in hushed, excited tones about hotel meetings and secret rendezvous, never imagining that the disabled child in the corner was absorbing every word. That's when I learned that everyone wears masks. My parents, David and Helen, loved me fiercely but in completely different ways. Dad approached my disability like a problem to solve, researching treatments and therapies with scientific determination. He filled notebooks with information about experimental procedures, potential cures, breakthrough technologies. Mom accepted my limitations with quiet grace, focusing on nurturing the parts of me that could flourish. Their different approaches created tension between them, arguments they thought I couldn't understand. But I caught every word of their midnight discussions about my future, their fears, their guilt, their disagreements about what was best for me. The medical appointments became my first real education in human nature. Doctors spoke over my head about prognosis and possibilities, using clinical language to discuss my life. Dr. Peterson, our family physician, was kind but pessimistic, always preparing my parents for the worst-case scenarios. Dr. Williams, my neurologist, held on to hope but struggled with his own demons. I could see the slight tremor in his hands that suggested his own health problems. These professionals, with all their knowledge and experience, forgot that their patient had functioning ears and an active mind. I absorbed their debates about my potential, their doubts about my future, their surprise discoveries about my cognitive abilities. School introduced me to the complex social hierarchies that govern childhood. Roosevelt Elementary became my laboratory for studying human behavior in its purest form. Mrs. Peterson, my kindergarten teacher, treated me with exaggerated kindness during parent conferences but rolled her eyes when she thought no one was looking. She saw me as extra work in an already challenging classroom. Tommy Rodriguez, the class troublemaker, was the only kid who talked to me normally, sharing his lunch and telling me jokes that made me laugh internally. He understood what adults had forgotten. That different doesn't mean less than. The playground was where I learned about both cruelty and compassion. Some children used me as a prop in their games, pushing my wheelchair around like a toy car. They spoke about me in third person even when I was right there, discussing my condition with the casual cruelty that only children possess. But I also witnessed unexpected kindness. Like when Jennifer Hayes stood up to the bullies, reading me stories during recess. When Marcus Thompson helped me participate in art projects, adapting activities so I could join in. These moments taught me that humanity exists on a spectrum, and everyone carries both light and darkness within them. My speech therapist, Ms. Johnson, became an unwitting source of adult secrets. She was having an affair with Mr. Davidson, the school principal. I could tell by their lingering glances, their careful body language around each other. She thought I was focused on my communication exercises, but I was really studying their subtle interactions. The way she blushed when he entered the room, how he found excuses to visit during our sessions. Their secret relationship taught me to read micro-expressions, to notice what people weren't saying along with what they were. These skills would prove invaluable throughout my life. Physical therapy sessions with Mrs. Garcia revealed another adult struggling with hidden pain. She worked with disabled children all day, maintaining professional cheerfulness despite her own battles with depression. I saw it in the way her shoulders sagged when she thought no one was watching, how her smile never quite reached her eyes. She was going through a divorce, facing financial problems, questioning her career choices. But she never let her personal struggles affect her work with us. Her dedication taught me about professional integrity and the quiet heroism of people who help others despite their own pain. Family gatherings became fascinating studies in complex relationships and long-held resentments. Thanksgiving dinners revealed the undercurrents of sibling rivalry between Dad and his brother Mike. Christmas celebrations exposed my grandmother's favoritism toward certain grandchildren and her disappointment in others. Easter meals showcased my mother's sisters competing over whose children were more successful. I sat in my wheelchair, apparently oblivious, while family members shared gossip, revealed secrets, and settled old scores. They forgot that the quiet child in the corner was cataloging every interaction, learning about family dynamics and human psychology. By age 8, I had developed an encyclopedic knowledge of the adults in my world. I knew which teachers were having marital problems based on their mood swings and phone conversations. I could predict which therapy sessions would be canceled based on my provider's behavior patterns. I understood my parents' financial stress from overheard discussions about insurance claims and medical bills. This knowledge felt like a superpower. I could see things that others missed, understand situations that confused even adults. My disability had given me an unexpected gift: the ability to observe human nature without being observed myself. The isolation of being different also taught me empathy in ways that typical children never learn. I watched other kids struggle with playground politics, academic pressure, family expectations. I saw the popular children dealing with the stress of maintaining their status, the quiet ones battling loneliness and self-doubt. Everyone was fighting some kind of battle, carrying some kind of pain. My own challenges gave me a unique perspective on their struggles. I understood what it felt like to be on the outside, to feel misunderstood, to face obstacles that seemed insurmountable. Summer camps for disabled children introduced me to others like myself, kids with different abilities but sharp minds. We formed our own community, our own language of understanding. Maria had muscular dystrophy but could solve complex math problems in her head. Kevin had autism but possessed an incredible memory for historical facts. Jessica used a communication device but had a wicked sense of humor that kept us all laughing. Together, we learned that disability doesn't define intelligence or worth. We were just kids who happened to have bodies that worked differently than the norm. The medical equipment that filled our house told its own story about our family's adaptation to my needs. The hospital bed in the living room, the wheelchair ramps Dad built himself, the communication devices that Mom researched for hours. Each modification represented love in action, practical expressions of unconditional acceptance. But I also saw the financial strain in my parents' faces, the exhaustion from sleepless nights, the social isolation that came with having a disabled child. Other families didn't understand our reality, didn't know how to include us in their activities. We learned to find joy in smaller circles, deeper connections. My 10th birthday party was attended by 3 other children and a dozen adults, therapists, teachers, family friends who came out of duty rather than celebration. But Tommy Rodriguez showed up with a handmade card and stayed for the entire party, genuinely enjoying himself. Mrs. Garcia brought her own grandson, who played games adapted for my abilities. These people saw past my wheelchair to the child inside, the person worthy of friendship and celebration. Their presence taught me that the size of your circle doesn't matter as much as the quality of connections within it. As elementary school ended, I had already lived through more adult secrets, family dramas, and human complexities than most children ever witness. My enforced silence had made me the perfect confidant, the ideal observer, the ultimate student of human behavior. While my classmates were learning to read and write, I was learning to read people, to understand motivations, to see through facades. This education would prove far more valuable than anything I learned from textbooks. The quiet child who couldn't speak had already begun developing the voice that would eventually change lives. High school brought new challenges and deeper insights as I navigated Roosevelt High with my aide, Mrs. Chin. She gossiped freely with other staff members, assuming I wasn't processing their conversations about student pregnancies and teacher affairs. I learned that Ashley Martinez was cutting herself in bathroom stalls, hiding scars under long sleeves. Coach Williams was embezzling money from the athletic fund to pay gambling debts. Mr. Foster, our beloved librarian, was slowly dying of cancer but hadn't told anyone except his wife. The weight of these secrets pressed down on me daily, creating an invisible burden I couldn't share with anyone. The social dynamics of teenage life fascinated me more than any academic subject. I watched Jessica Palmer fall desperately in love with 3 different boys in one semester, each time convinced it was true love. I observed the cruel popularity games where social status could change overnight based on rumors or weekend parties. Sarah Chin, the perfect student council president, was bulimic and spent lunch periods vomiting in the second-floor bathroom. Derek Thompson, star quarterback and prom king material, visited his dying grandmother every day after school, reading to her and holding her hand. Nobody knew about his gentle heart or the poetry he wrote in secret. The teachers revealed themselves to be just as complex as their students, maybe more so. Mr. Harrison, the strict history teacher everyone feared, was supporting his disabled brother financially and emotionally, working 2 jobs to pay for specialized care. Ms. Rodriguez, the young Spanish teacher, was in an abusive relationship but covered her bruises with makeup and long sleeves. She smiled through her pain every day, never letting her personal struggles affect her teaching. Mrs. Davidson struggled with alcoholism, keeping vodka in her desk drawer and popping mints constantly to hide the smell. The adults I'd once seen as authority figures were revealed as complex humans carrying their own wounds. My classmates' home lives were often more complicated than their school personas suggested. Michael Torres, the charismatic class president, was more interested in Mr. Peterson, the male drama teacher, than any of the girls who pursued him. He was struggling with his sexuality in a conservative community, terrified his family would disown him. Lisa Wong, the academic overachiever, was addicted to prescription stimulants, stealing pills from her mother's medicine cabinet to maintain her perfect grades. Jennifer Hayes, the popular cheerleader, worked nights at a diner to support her unemployed father and disabled mother. Everyone was performing a version of themselves rather than revealing who they really were. Prom night became a revelation about the thin veneer of teenage sophistication. From my position by the gymnasium wall, I watched the drama unfold like a Shakespearean tragedy. The prom queen, Sarah Chin, spent the evening crying in the bathroom because her boyfriend was kissing other girls. 3 couples broke up before midnight, 2 others got engaged in the parking lot. One girl discovered she was pregnant in the school bathroom while her date danced with someone else. The night that was supposed to be magical became a showcase of human vulnerability and the desperate teenage need to belong. My own adolescent struggles were internal but no less intense than my peers. While my classmates worried about acne and awkward social interactions, I grappled with growing awareness that I might never experience romantic love the way they did. I felt desire, longing, and typical teenage emotions, but trapped in a body that couldn't express these feelings appropriately. I developed crushes on classmates who saw me as furniture, fell in love with my physical therapist who treated me like a child. The emotional isolation was more painful than any physical limitation I faced. Dating culture among my peers became a source of both entertainment and heartbreak for me. I watched couples form and dissolve with the intensity that only teenagers can muster. Jamie Rodriguez dated 5 different boys junior year, each relationship lasting exactly 6 weeks before she grew bored and moved on. Marcus Williams pursued the same girl for 2 years, writing her poetry and leaving flowers in her locker, never realizing she was completely uninterested. These patterns taught me about persistence versus delusion, about reading social cues and respecting boundaries. I was learning about relationships from the outside, storing knowledge I might never get to use myself. The pressure on my generation was different from what my parents had experienced. College admission requirements were more competitive, social media created constant comparison opportunities, and economic uncertainty made the future feel less secure. I watched classmates crack under the pressure, some turning to drugs, others developing eating disorders, many struggling with anxiety and depression. The guidance counselors were overwhelmed, the parents were often oblivious, and the teachers were dealing with their own problems. Mental health was rarely discussed openly, leaving teenagers to suffer in silence. Family dynamics became even more complex as my classmates dealt with divorce, remarriage, and blended families. Tommy Rodriguez lived with his grandmother because his parents were both addicted to methamphetamines. Jennifer Hayes had 3 different father figures and was never sure which one would show up to school events. Marcus Thompson's parents were getting divorced but pretending everything was fine, creating a tension-filled home environment. I realized that the normal families I'd sometimes envied weren't necessarily happier than mine. Every family carried its own dysfunction, its own secrets, its own pain. Technology was beginning to change how teenagers communicated and related to each other. Early social media platforms allowed for new forms of bullying and social manipulation. I watched relationships develop online that never translated to real-world connections. Students crafted perfect digital personas while struggling with very real problems offline. The gap between online presentation and offline reality was often huge, adding another layer of performance and deception to teenage life. I was grateful, in some ways, to be observing rather than participating in these new social complexities. My academic performance surprised teachers who had low expectations for disabled students. My essays, typed with great difficulty using adaptive technology, demonstrated insights into human behavior that impressed my psychology teacher, Mr. Davis. He began staying after class to discuss concepts with me, treating me as an intellectual equal rather than a disabled student to be pitted. Through our conversations, I realized that my years of observation had given me an intuitive understanding of psychological principles that most students only learn from textbooks. My disability had accidentally made me an expert in human nature. The transition from adolescence to young adulthood was marked by college applications, career planning, and first jobs. I watched my classmates make decisions about their futures, often based more on parental expectations than personal interests. Sarah Chin chose pre-med to please her parents despite her love for art. Derek Thompson turned down football scholarships to study literature, causing a rift with his father. Michael Torres applied only to schools far from home, hoping to explore his identity away from family judgment. Everyone was trying to balance their authentic selves with external expectations, a struggle I understood better than most. Graduation day arrived with mixed emotions coursing through me. I watched my classmates receive their diplomas, make plans for college and careers, embrace their futures with optimism and uncertainty. My future seemed less certain, more dependent on others, limited by societal perceptions and assumptions. But I had gained something they hadn't, an intimate understanding of human nature, a database of behavioral patterns, and the ability to see beyond surface presentations. While they were learning to navigate the world, I was learning to read it like an open book. The summer after graduation brought a sense of ending and beginning simultaneously. Some friendships would survive the transition to college, others would fade away. Some secrets would eventually be revealed, others would remain buried forever. As I prepared for my next chapter, I carried with me everything I'd learned about human nature during these formative years. The shy observer had become a student of psychology, sociology, and human behavior without ever taking a formal class. My real education was just beginning, but I already had a PhD in watching, listening, and understanding the complex creatures we call human beings. Community college opened new worlds of observation as I enrolled with the help of accessibility services. My aide, Rebecca, was a psychology major juggling 3 different boyfriends, each unaware of the other's existence. I watched her navigate these complicated relationships with calculated precision, learning different versions of herself for each man. Through her experiences, I witnessed the games people play in love and the elaborate lies they tell themselves about their own behavior. She treated me like a confidant, sharing intimate details about her love life as if I were a trusted friend rather than a student she was paid to assist. Rebecca's relationship drama provided daily entertainment and education. Marcus, her main boyfriend, was a pre-med student who believed they were exclusive. Jake, her weekend companion, was a musician who thought she was single and available. David, her study partner, was married but convinced she was worth leaving his wife for. I watched her juggle phone calls, create elaborate cover stories, and manage her time like a complex business operation. The emotional toll on her was evident: dark circles under her eyes, nervous habits, the constant stress of maintaining multiple deceptions. Yet she seemed addicted to the chaos, thriving on the drama and attention. Professor Williams in my psychology class noticed something different about me during group discussions. While I couldn't participate verbally, my essays demonstrated insights into human behavior that surprised him. He began staying after class to discuss concepts with me, treating me as an intellectual equal rather than a disabled student to be accommodated. Through our conversations, I realized that my years of silent observation had given me an intuitive understanding of psychological principles that most students only learn from textbooks. He encouraged me to consider advanced study, suggesting that my unique perspective could contribute valuable insights to the field. The dormitory life, though I lived at home, exposed me to young adult independence through study groups and social gatherings. I witnessed the loneliness disguised as party behavior, the academic pressure driving some students to dangerous extremes, and the financial stress that kept others awake at night. Jennifer worked 3 jobs to stay in school while her parents thought she was just having fun at college. Marcus, the popular fraternity president, had severe social anxiety and drank heavily to cope with social expectations. Everyone was struggling with something, yet they all maintained facades of having everything figured out. My mother's health began declining during my second year, though she hid it from everyone, including Dad. I noticed her trembling hands first, then her increased fatigue, the way she winced when she thought no one was looking. The diagnosis of early-onset Parkinson's disease came as a shock to everyone except me. Suddenly, our family dynamics shifted as Dad became the primary caregiver, and I transitioned from being the one who needed care to being the one who provided emotional support through my presence. The role reversal was both heartbreaking and empowering, as I finally found a way to give back to the woman who had given me everything. Watching my parents navigate this new reality taught me about the different ways people cope with illness. Dad approached Mom's Parkinson's the same way he'd approached my disability, with research, determination, and an unshakable belief that the right treatment could fix everything. Mom faced her diagnosis with the same grace she'd shown throughout my childhood, accepting her limitations while fighting to maintain her dignity. Their marriage deepened during this period, love expressing itself through patience, adaptation, and countless small acts of service. I realized that true partnership isn't about shared activities or perfect health. It's about choosing each other every day regardless of circumstances. Love found me in the most unexpected way through Sarah, a nursing student who volunteered at the campus Disability Resource Center. Unlike others who spoke to me in baby talk or avoided eye contact, Sarah engaged with me as a complete person. She learned to interpret my limited verbal communications and facial expressions, understanding my thoughts and feelings in ways that amazed me. Our relationship developed slowly, built on genuine connection rather than physical attraction. She saw past my limitations to the person I was inside, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and valued for who I was rather than what I couldn't do. Sarah possessed a maturity beyond her years and a heart that refused to be influenced by others' judgments. She had grown up with a brother who had Down syndrome, giving her insights into disability that most people lacked. She understood that different doesn't mean less than, that love isn't about what 2 people can do together physically, but about how they understand, support, and cherish each other's souls. Her acceptance of me was complete and unconditional, never treating my disability as something to overcome or ignore. Instead, she embraced all of me, limitations and abilities alike. Our relationship faced scrutiny from all sides. Her friends questioned her motives, my family worried about her intentions, and society in general seemed uncomfortable with our unconventional love story. Some people assumed she was with me out of pity or for some psychological reason related to her brother's disability. Others suggested I was taking advantage of her kind nature. The judgments hurt, but they also strengthened our bond as we learned to rely on each other's understanding rather than seeking approval from others. We discovered that real love transcends social expectations and conventional definitions of romance. The progression of my mother's Parkinson's accelerated during my junior year, adding new layers of complexity to our family life. She struggled with tasks that had once been effortless, and I watched her frustration mirror my own lifelong experience with physical limitations. But where I had never known different, she was losing abilities she'd always taken for granted. Dad became expert at helping her with daily tasks while trying to preserve her dignity and independence. Their relationship became a masterclass in adaptation, compromise, and unconditional love. I learned that caring for someone isn't about fixing them, it's about being present through their struggles. Sarah's family welcomed me with warmth and curiosity rather than pity or discomfort. Her brother Tom, who had Down syndrome, treated me like any other potential brother-in-law, asking me about my intentions toward his sister and making it clear he would be watching out for her. Her parents asked practical questions about our relationship and future plans, approaching our situation with respect and genuine interest. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to be part of a family that saw disability as just another aspect of human diversity rather than a tragedy to be overcome. My academic performance continued to impress professors as I developed my understanding of psychology and human behavior. Dr. Martinez encouraged me to consider graduate school, suggesting that my unique perspective could contribute to research on nonverbal communication and therapeutic relationships. The idea of turning my lifetime of observation into formal expertise was both exciting and daunting. I had spent so many years being the subject of other people's studies and evaluations. The thought of becoming the researcher rather than the researched felt revolutionary. The engagement happened quietly, without fanfare or traditional romantic gestures. Sarah and I were studying together in the library when she looked up from her textbook and simply said, "I want to spend my life with you." I couldn't respond with words, but my tears and the squeeze of her hand communicated everything she needed to know. We didn't need a dramatic proposal or expensive ring. Our love had been built on countless small moments of understanding and acceptance. The decision to marry felt as natural as breathing, the inevitable conclusion of two souls who had recognized each other completely. Planning our wedding became an exercise in adapting traditions to fit our unique circumstances. We couldn't have a traditional ceremony where I would speak vows aloud, so Sarah suggested we write them together and she would speak for both of us. Instead of a big reception with dancing I couldn't participate in, we planned an intimate gathering focused on good food and meaningful conversations. Every decision was made with consideration for my limitations but also with respect for my dignity. Our wedding would be a celebration of love that transcends conventional expectations, a testament to the beauty of relationships that develop outside society's narrow definitions of normalcy. After graduation, finding employment proved challenging despite my education and unique insights. Most employers saw my wheelchair and communication difficulties before considering my qualifications or potential contributions. Rejection letters piled up, each one a reminder that the world still viewed people like me as charity cases rather than valuable team members. The job search process revealed uncomfortable truths about workplace discrimination and the assumptions people make about disabled candidates. However, my years of observation had taught me persistence and the art of reading people, skills that would eventually open doors in unexpected ways. My breakthrough came through Dr. Martinez, my former psychology professor, who recommended me for a research position studying nonverbal communication patterns in therapeutic settings. The research facility was part of the university's psychology department, focusing on how therapists and patients communicate through body language, facial expressions, and other nonverbal cues. My unique perspective as someone who had spent a lifetime observing human behavior without being able to participate verbally made me an ideal candidate for this work. Finally, my disability was being seen as an asset rather than a limitation. The research facility became my professional home, where my lifetime of observation finally found its purpose. My ability to read microexpressions, body language, and subtle emotional cues made me invaluable in analyzing patient-therapist interactions. I could identify when therapists missed important nonverbal signals from patients, when patients were being dishonest about their progress, and when therapeutic relationships were either flourishing or failing. My reports, painstakingly typed using adaptive technology, began gaining recognition in academic circles for their depth and accuracy. The silent observer had finally found his voice in the world of professional psychology. Working closely with Dr. Amanda Foster, the lead researcher, I discovered someone who truly understood the value of different perspectives. She had a brother with autism and recognized that neurological differences often came with unique gifts rather than just limitations. Under her mentorship, I began developing new assessment tools for therapists, helping them better understand their patients' unspoken communications. Our collaboration resulted in 3 published papers that changed how mental health professionals approached nonverbal assessment. I was finally making a difference in the world, using my experiences to help others understand the importance of truly seeing and hearing their patients. Sarah and I married in a small ceremony surrounded by family and friends who had learned to see our love as beautiful rather than unusual. Our wedding day was perfect in its imperfection. I couldn't say traditional vows, so Sarah read both sets while I communicated my love through tears of joy and the squeeze of her hand. My father, who had once grieved for the son I couldn't be, walked me down the aisle with pride in his eyes. My mother, despite her advancing Parkinson's, danced with Sarah to our wedding song, her trembling hands steady for those precious moments. The day proved that happiness comes in many forms, not just the ones society typically celebrates. Our first apartment together was a revelation in independence and partnership. Sarah adapted our living space to accommodate my needs while preserving my dignity and autonomy. She installed voice-activated systems, rearranged furniture for wheelchair accessibility, and created workspaces where I could continue my research from home when needed. But more importantly, she gave me responsibilities and treated me as an equal partner in our household decisions. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just someone being cared for, I was someone contributing to a shared life with purpose and meaning. The transition to married life brought new observations about long-term relationships and the daily negotiations that make partnerships work. I watched our neighbors, the Johnsons, slowly grow apart as they stopped really seeing each other after 20 years of marriage. Meanwhile, the elderly couple next door, the Garcias, still held hands during their evening walks despite his dementia and her arthritis. Love, I learned, wasn't about perfect circumstances or ideal health. It was about choosing each other every day regardless of challenges. Sarah and I made that choice daily, and our marriage became stronger because we had already faced society's doubts and proven them wrong. My professional reputation began to grow as therapists reported better outcomes when they used my assessment tools to understand their patients' nonverbal communications. I received invitations to present at conferences via video presentation, and my adaptive communication technology allowed me to share insights that could only come from a lifetime of silent observation. The irony wasn't lost on me that my greatest limitation, the inability to speak freely, had become my greatest professional asset. I was becoming known as the man who sees everything, a title that both honored my abilities and sometimes made people uncomfortable around me. Research projects expanded beyond the university as hospitals and rehabilitation centers sought my expertise in improving patient-therapist communications. I consulted on cases involving patients with communication disorders, helping therapists understand when their clients were struggling to express complex emotions or traumatic memories. My work with children was particularly rewarding, as I could identify when young patients were being abused or neglected based on their nonverbal behaviors during therapy sessions. These children, like me, had learned to communicate without words, and I became their translator in a world that often failed to hear their silent cries for help. The financial independence that came with professional success was liberating in ways I hadn't anticipated. For the first time in my life, I could contribute meaningfully to our household expenses, reducing the financial burden on Sarah and giving me a sense of personal worth beyond my relationships. I could afford adaptive technology that improved my quality of life, contribute to my parents' medical expenses as Mom's condition worsened, and even save for the future Sarah and I were building together. Money represented freedom and choice, commodities that had always been limited by my dependence on others. My parents' relationship continued to evolve as Mom's Parkinson's disease progressed, transforming their marriage from partnership to caregiving arrangement and back to deeper love. Dad learned to help her with tasks she had once done effortlessly, while she struggled with the loss of independence that I had never possessed. Their role reversal taught me about the different ways people adapt to physical limitations and the importance of maintaining dignity throughout the process. Watching them navigate this challenge together showed me that real love adapts to changing circumstances rather than being defeated by them. Sarah's career as a nurse flourished during this period, and I took pride in supporting her professional growth the way she had always supported mine. She specialized in working with patients who had communication disorders, inspired partly by our relationship and her understanding of alternative ways people express themselves. Her colleagues respected her insights into nonverbal communication, often seeking her advice on difficult cases. I realized that our love story was creating ripple effects in the healthcare community, changing how professionals approached patients with disabilities and communication challenges. The success of our research program led to opportunities one had never imagined possible. Universities across the country began incorporating our nonverbal assessment tools into their therapy training programs. Graduate students studied my work, learning to pay attention to the subtle cues that traditional therapy training often overlooked. I was invited to serve on review boards for research proposals, helping to ensure that studies involving disabled participants were conducted with appropriate respect and understanding. My voice, expressed through written words and adaptive technology, was finally being heard in academic circles. My 30s brought professional recognition as my research on nonverbal communication gained international attention. The academic world finally understood that my disability hadn't hindered my ability to contribute meaningful insights. It had enhanced it. Universities invited me to speak at conferences via video presentation, and my adaptive communication technology allowed me to share knowledge that could only come from a lifetime of silent observation. I became known as The man who sees everything, a title that both honored my abilities and sometimes made people uncomfortable around me. The irony wasn't lost on me that my greatest limitation, the inability to speak freely, had become my greatest professional asset. Sarah and I faced our own challenges when we discovered that having biological children would be complicated by my condition and the medications I required. The fertility specialist spoke to us like we were making a mistake even trying, his bias evident in every condescending explanation. He questioned whether people like me should reproduce, whether we could provide adequate care for children, whether our potential offspring might inherit my disability. His prejudice was so blatant that Sarah requested a different doctor, but the damage to our confidence was already done. We left that appointment feeling judged rather than supported, reminded that society still questioned our right to create life together. The fertility journey became emotionally and physically exhausting, filled with procedures, disappointments, and the constant judgment of medical professionals who questioned our decision to become parents. Some doctors were supportive and encouraging, while others made it clear they thought we were being selfish or unrealistic. The treatments were expensive, invasive, and often unsuccessful, creating stress in our marriage that we hadn't anticipated. But Sarah's determination matched my own, and we refused to let other people's prejudices determine our family planning decisions. Our love had already overcome so many obstacles. We wouldn't let this one defeat us either. Our daughter Emma arrived after 3 years of treatments, a beautiful miracle who changed our world completely. Holding her for the first time despite my limited motor control, filled me with a love so profound it hurt. She was perfect, 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and a cry that announced her arrival to the world with authority. But along with the joy came new fears. Would she be embarrassed by her different dad? Would other children treat her poorly because of my disability? Would I be able to protect and guide her effectively? These worries consumed my thoughts as I watched her grow from infant to toddler, observing her development with both parental love and professional interest in human behavior. Emma's early years revealed the innocent acceptance that children possess before society teaches them prejudice. She adapted naturally to communicating with me through gestures, expressions, and our special father-daughter language that evolved between us. She never saw my wheelchair as strange or my communication difficulties as barriers. I was simply Daddy, the man who read her stories through picture books and sang lullabies in his own unique way. Her unconditional love helped heal wounds I hadn't even realized were still bleeding from years of being seen as less than by the outside world. Parenting from a wheelchair presented unique challenges that other fathers didn't face, but it also offered perspectives that enriched Emma's upbringing in unexpected ways. I couldn't chase her around the playground, but I could observe her interactions with other children and help her navigate social situations with insights most parents missed. I couldn't carry her when she was tired, but I could teach her about persistence, adaptation, and finding creative solutions to problems. My limitations forced us to develop different kinds of connections, deeper conversations, more creative play, stronger emotional bonds built on understanding rather than physical activity. The other parents at Emma's preschool initially treated me with a mixture of pity and curiosity, but Emma's confidence in our relationship gradually changed their perceptions. She spoke about me with such pride and normalcy that they began to see me as just another dad rather than a disabled man trying to parent. Some parents even sought my advice about their children's behavior, recognizing that my observational skills gave me insights into child psychology that they found valuable. Emma became my ambassador to the world of typical parenting, showing everyone that families come in many forms and love is what matters most. Professional success continued as my research methods were implemented in therapy programs across the country. Therapists reported better outcomes when they used my assessment tools to understand their patients' nonverbal communications. Graduate programs began teaching my techniques as standard practice, and my published papers became required reading in many psychology curricula. I received offers to consult with hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and even corporations interested in improving their understanding of employee satisfaction and workplace dynamics. The boy who couldn't speak had found his voice through helping others understand what wasn't being said. My mother's Parkinson's disease progressed steadily during this period, and I watched Dad become her full-time caregiver with a dedication that both inspired and worried me. He was aging too, developing his own health problems while focusing entirely on Mom's needs. Their relationship had evolved into something beautiful but heartbreaking. A love story told through patience, adaptation, and countless small acts of service. I realized that caring for someone isn't about fixing them or returning them to their former selves. It's about being present through their journey, whatever that journey looks like. Emma began asking questions about my disability as she grew older, approaching the topic with the same curiosity she showed about everything else in her world. I answered her questions honestly but age-appropriately, explaining that some people's bodies work differently than others, but that doesn't make them less valuable or less capable of love. She accepted these explanations easily, incorporating my disability into her understanding of human diversity rather than seeing it as something tragic or shameful. Her matter-of-fact acceptance reminded me that prejudice is learned, not innate. Children see people as individuals until society teaches them to categorize and judge. The academic community began recognizing my contributions with awards and honors that I had never imagined receiving. The International Association of Psychology presented me with their Innovation in Research Award for developing new assessment tools that revolutionized therapeutic communication. The American Disability Studies Association honored my work in changing perceptions about disabled people's potential contributions to academia. These recognitions felt surreal. The child who had been written off by so many professionals was now being celebrated by the same community that had once doubted his potential. Sarah's career flourished as she became a leading expert in communication disorders, inspired partly by our relationship and her deep understanding of alternative ways people express themselves. Hospitals recruited her for her insights into nonverbal communication, and she began training other nurses in techniques for understanding patients who couldn't communicate traditionally. Her success felt like a shared victory. We were both using our experiences to change how healthcare professionals approached patients with communication challenges. Our love story was creating ripple effects that improved care for countless people like me. Emma's 5th birthday party was attended by a diverse group of children and parents who had become our community over the years. The guest list included kids with various abilities and disabilities, families from different cultural backgrounds, and adults who had learned to see past surface differences to the people underneath. Watching Emma play with her friends, I realized she was growing up in a world where diversity was normal, where differences were accepted, where love came in many forms. She would never know the isolation I had experienced because she was learning from birth that all people have value and deserve respect. The weight of secrets I had carried throughout my life began to feel different during this period. Instead of being burdens I bore alone, they became insights I could use to help others. My understanding of human nature, developed through decades of observation, was now serving a purpose beyond personal knowledge. I was using what I had learned about deception, pain, love, and resilience to help therapists better understand their patients, to train professionals in reading nonverbal cues, to improve communication between people who struggled to connect. The silent observer had become a teacher, and the lessons I taught were changing lives. Planning Emma's education became an opportunity to advocate for inclusion and understanding in ways my parents had never been able to do for me. I spoke with her teachers about disability awareness, consulted with the school about accessibility issues, and helped create an environment where all children felt welcome and valued. Emma watched me advocate for inclusive practices, learning that everyone has a responsibility to make the world more welcoming for people with differences. She was growing up understanding that advocacy isn't something you do for disabled people. It's something you do with them, respecting their voices and following their lead. Now, as I lie here listening to the mechanical rhythm of machines keeping my body functioning while pneumonia wages war against my compromised lungs, I can see the full arc of my 34 years with startling clarity. The infection that brought me to this hospital bed isn't the enemy I once thought it was. It's simply another chapter in a life that was always going to be different, always going to be challenging, but also always going to be meaningful in ways I never expected. The doctor's whispered conversations outside my room suggest this might be my final story, but I'm not afraid anymore. I've lived fully, loved deeply, and contributed meaningfully to the world despite every limitation placed upon me. Sarah sits beside me, holding my hand and reading to Emma over video chat since children aren't allowed in the ICU. Our daughter, now 7 years old, draws pictures of our family where everyone is smiling, including Daddy in his special chair. Her innocent art captures the truth that took me decades to understand. My wheelchair was never a limitation, it was simply part of who I am, like brown hair or green eyes. Emma has never known a world where her father wasn't disabled, so she's never seen it as something to overcome or fix. Through her eyes, I finally learned to see myself as complete rather than broken, whole rather than missing pieces. The pneumonia isn't responding to treatment as well as the doctors hoped, and my weakened respiratory system is struggling more each day. My oxygen levels keep dropping despite the ventilator's assistance, and I can see the concern in every medical professional's eyes. But instead of panic, I feel a strange peace settling over me. If these are my final days, I've used them to share everything I witnessed, every secret I kept, every moment of human beauty and ugliness that crossed my path. My life wasn't measured in steps taken or words spoken. It was measured in understanding gained and wisdom shared through my research, my writings, and the people whose lives I touched along the way. Looking back, I realized that being born with cerebral palsy wasn't the tragedy everyone thought it was. It was a gift wrapped in challenges that forced me to develop strengths others never needed to discover. My limitations forced me to become an expert observer of human nature, to understand people in ways that typical interaction never could have taught me. My silence taught me to listen more deeply than most people ever can. My stillness allowed me to witness human nature in its rawest, most honest forms. While others were busy talking, moving, and acting, I was learning to truly see. The world needs observers, witnesses, people who remember what others forget or ignore. The ventilator alarm just went off again, bringing nurses rushing into my room with practiced urgency. Dr. Martinez adjusts my medication while explaining to Sarah that my condition is deteriorating more rapidly than expected. Sarah squeezes my hand tighter, and I can see the tears she's trying to hide for my sake. If this is goodbye, I want her to know that our love story was the most beautiful thing I ever witnessed. She taught me that disability doesn't disqualify anyone from experiencing the full range of human emotions and connections. Through loving her and being loved in return, I became more than my limitations. I became a husband, a father, a researcher, a teacher. I became fully human. My mother's Parkinson's has progressed to the point where she can no longer visit, but Dad sits in the corner of my room, watching me the same way I've spent my life watching others. I can see in his eyes the same love that sustained me through childhood, the same determination that drove him to research every possible treatment, the same pride that he felt when I graduated college and got married. He's aged significantly over the past few years, caring for both Mom and worrying about me, but his love remains constant. In his vigil beside my bed, I see myself, the devoted observer, the faithful witness, the person who shows love through presence rather than words. The research I conducted over the past decade will continue without me, implemented in therapy programs across the country and around the world. Graduate students will study my techniques for reading nonverbal communication. Therapists will use my assessment tools to better understand their patients, and law enforcement agencies will apply my insights to protect vulnerable people. My professional legacy extends far beyond my physical presence, living on in the improved care that countless patients will receive because someone finally took the time to understand what they were saying without words. The silent child who was overlooked and underestimated became a voice for all the voiceless. Emma draws me another picture. This one shows our whole family together in heaven, where Daddy doesn't need his wheelchair anymore but still has his special seeing eyes. Her innocent faith comforts me more than any religious doctrine or philosophical argument about the afterlife. If heaven exists, I imagine it as a place where all the secrets I've kept can finally be shared, where all the pain I've witnessed can be healed, where all the love I've observed can be celebrated. Whether that's my destination or not, I'm grateful for the love that surrounded me in this life, the purpose I found despite my limitations, and the difference I was able to make in the world. Sarah whispers that she loves me, that she's proud of everything I've accomplished, that Emma will always know how much her daddy adored her. These words, spoken in the quiet of this hospital room, carry more weight than any award or recognition I ever received. Love, I've learned, is the only currency that matters in the end. Not the love we receive, though that's precious, but the love we give, the lives we touch, the positive changes we create in the world. By that measure, my life has been rich beyond imagination, successful beyond conventional definitions, meaningful beyond my wildest dreams. The machines around me tell their story of a body shutting down, systems failing one by one. But my consciousness burns brighter than ever, perhaps preparing me for whatever comes next. If I survive this infection, I'll continue my work with renewed purpose, knowing how precious each day is. If I don't, I'll leave knowing that I used every moment given to me, that I loved fully and was loved completely in return. The boy who was born unable to walk or talk clearly became a man who helped others understand the importance of really seeing and truly listening. Whether I wake up tomorrow or cross over to whatever comes after this life, my message remains the same. Never underestimate the quiet ones, the different ones, the ones who can't speak for themselves. We see more than you think, understand more than you know, and have more to offer than society typically recognizes. My life proved that value isn't measured by what someone can do with their body, but by what they can accomplish with their mind and heart. The silent observer who spent 34 years watching the world became a teacher who helped others learn to see. The monitors show my vital signs stabilizing slightly, giving everyone a moment of hope. Maybe I'll recover from this infection, maybe I won't. Either way, I'm ready. I've shared my story, revealed my secrets, and left my mark on the world through the research that will continue helping people long after I'm gone. The boy who couldn't walk became a man who moved mountains through understanding and compassion. The child who couldn't speak became an adult whose voice echoes in therapy rooms and research centers around the world. As the sun sets outside my hospital window, painting the sky in brilliant colors that I might be seeing for the last time, I feel complete. My life was different than what anyone expected, more meaningful than anyone imagined, and more impactful than I ever dreamed possible. I learned that disabilities are only limitations if we accept other people's definitions of what makes a life worthwhile. True success is measured not by what we can do, but by how much love we give and receive, how many lives we touch, and how much understanding we bring to the world. In the end, that's a pretty good legacy for anyone, disabled or not. The silent witness who spent a lifetime learning to see has finally found his voice, and that voice will continue speaking long after the machines fall silent. My story proves that every life has value, every person has gifts to offer, and love truly does conquer all, even the limitations that seem insurmountable. Thank you for listening to my story, for seeing me as I truly am, and for understanding that the quiet ones often have the most important things to say.